Well, with me live. I am your host and your hypnotist, Adrianne Hart, and together we explore the healing powers of our subconscious mind while leaning in towards a healthier lifestyle. And our philosophy here is excellence, not perfection. Today is a extra special episode because I'm introducing you to my hypnotherapist, Dustin Fisher. He has helped me with a multitude of issues, traumas, phobias, confidence, and other confidential issues. So it's an honor to have you on the podcast today, Dustin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for letting me be here. Absolutely.
So, Dustin is a graduate of HMI Institute. He has been practicing hypnosis for over 12 years. He has a tremendous amount of experience. He's a great resource to me. We often do check in on case studies and uh, interesting ways to help our clients with one another. So he's been also a great resource to me that way. Dustin, tell me, do you know just approximately how many clients that you have worked with in the last 12 years?
Yeah, so clients wise, roughly 600, 700, but sessions wise, a little over 2,000.
That's incredible. 2000 sessions.
Mhm.
So that's why when I'm not sure what avenue to take with a client, I consult with Dustin because he has seen all of the things. And I want to right off the bat recommend him for those clients that I don't work with, men's issues, and especially he has a niche, which is gambling. He's helped many people to overcome gambling addiction and get free. He is the author of Gambling on Freedom. Is that the name of the book?
It is The Easy Way to Quit Gambling is the book.
Ah, yes. Okay. His YouTube channel is Gambling on Freedom, and the easy way to quit gambling is his book. I have purchased his book and looked it over, and it's very succinct and it's an easy read. It's a great place to start for someone who is maybe concerned that they do have an issue with gambling or someone who knows that they do. Maybe they're not ready to reach out to a therapist just yet. So can you tell us a little bit about what might be the signs that their gambling has gotten out of control? What might be like the warning signs and symptoms?
Sure. I would say one of the biggest ones is knowing that whenever you think about gambling, you have a internal shift from sort of this bored, mundane, lonely, sad state or anxious state, and then you think about gambling, and now you have this instant shift to want to have excitement and relief and to go towards that thing. So the internal shift is a really big symptom. If you're just thinking about gambling and you have an internal shift of, okay, well, I was feeling really kind of bored or mundane, and then now I'm feeling excited. That's a good way to know. Another one is mental space. So if you're thinking about it in times of work or times of doing something that you know you should be focusing on, and the only thing in your mind is I need to go gamble, that's a good symptom of this is probably a problem. Yeah.
What would you say would be some financial symptoms that you see people
Sure.
doing with their money or not doing with their money?
Yeah, another one would be because there's a lot of personal shame around gambling addiction. When people are married or they have girlfriends, boyfriends, and they have a gambling addiction, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll have a separate bank account and they'll be funneling money into that and then sort of lying to their spouse or their significant other about even going gambling and kind of hiding it. So if you're hiding financials, or if you're creating a separate account for it, or if you're you know, just putting money aside to go gamble, like you're saving up to go do it, those are financial symptoms you could think of. Sure.
Okay. What would be a way that someone might recognize that they are, let's say they're getting relief from the gambling. What
Mhm.
does that mean that they're getting relief from?
Sure. So the way I like to think of it is the gambling addiction is the attempted solution to the problem, right? It's not actually the problem, it's the attempted solution to the problem. This goes
Mm.
for pretty much any addiction, smoking, drinking, whatever. The addiction itself is the attempted solution to the problem, meaning that what they're really getting is a false sense of security, a relief from tension, right? So it's like if I were to be wearing shoes that are two sizes too big, and I'm going around my whole day doing errands, working, going to the gym, all these things, and I come home and I take off my shoes, I'm going to have that sense of relief on my feet. But the relief was manufactured by tension that should have never been there. And
Mm.
so what you'll find is, that relief is actually not real. If you had real entertainment or real relief or real excitement or real fun from gambling, then you wouldn't have a sense of regret or shame afterwards. It would be just like going to a concert or to a movie, or, you go do something actually fun. You do those things and you don't have that sense of shame afterwards of losing a lot of money, or lying to yourself, lying to your spouse, breaking promises. You don't have that sense of shame or regret for doing it. So it's not actual relief, it's just manufactured relief. So if you find yourself having that relief and then especially afterwards having a sense of regret or shame, that's a good sign that it's becoming more of a problem, because that sense of regret and shame leads more into pain. And eventually, if it is an addiction, that pain is going to lead you back to wanting more relief. And it just becomes a loop.
Mm.
So
The vicious cycle, I
the
like to
vicious
call
cycle,
it.
right?
So, can you share with us what would be some common gambling traps? I know gambling, it doesn't have to be an addiction or a problem for everyone. However, it does seem like it's getting more popular, at least in the state where I'm from. You cannot watch the television without being tempted with 1,000 free spins or whatever it might be. Sports gambling, all of those kinds of things. What would you say are some common traps, so to speak?
Sure. I think a big trap is one that we talked about before, which is that player's card.
Mm,
And you have this player's card, and you realize that every so often you have a lot of free gifts coming your way, brochures. And if you come into this casino, you'll get this free hot plate or this free cookware, or you'll get a lesser price on a room. So when you start to see a lot of these brochures coming in, that's a big trap, because as you and I know as hypnotherapists, marketing is essentially hypnosis. And so
mhm,
if they're just bombarding you all the time with it, and then you see it on TV, and now you're thinking, I should go have
mhm,
fun, I need to have fun, I've worked really hard my whole week, I deserve to have fun. So that sort of allowance of deciding that you deserve it, you're seeing it all the time, those are traps. Another trap would be kind of like what we just discussed a little bit earlier, which is you're thinking about it all the time, even in places that you shouldn't be thinking about it. That's a trap, because you're just ruminating, you're just spinning. And eventually, those thoughts create emotion, those emotions lead to action, and those actions lead to you doing something, right? So
mhm,
those are traps. You also have the trap of hope, right?
mhm,
Hope is a big trap that I mentioned in the book, that I have out. And so what happens is, there's almost this hope for that big win, that jackpot. And so if you
mhm,
start seeing yourself really desiring the money or the jackpot, that's a trap, because even if you won the jackpot, let's say you won the jackpot and you pay off a lot of debt and you better your situation. If you have an addiction, then what will happen is the rest of that money will go back into the casino. And a lot of
mm,
times, even when you win the jackpot, a lot of times if you have an addiction that's strong, you might not even pay off all of your debt. You might pay off some of your debt
mm.
and still put it back into, just because of that hope of wanting to get more. So there's quite a few traps, absolutely.
Can you speak a little bit about the trap of being on a cruise? And I'm going to speak from experience here. Many of us have been on a cruise that was maybe diverted to another location or wasn't allowed for whatever reason to dock. And so you're just out floating around in casino land. So
Yeah,
I've fallen into that trap myself. Can you speak a little bit about the
sure.
psychology of like the cruise and the casino situation?
Sure, yeah, the cruise trap, right? This is a big one, because on a cruise you can't go anywhere, right?
Hmm.
So they kind of place that casino right in the middle of everything. You have to, wherever you want to go, to the food court area, to the show area, entertainment area, wherever you want to go, that casino is like right in the middle. And so you have to pass it every time. So anyone who is a gambling addict will see it. And, a lot of times what they do is they open the casino. Well, it depends on the cruise, but a lot of times they open the casino, especially right after a show or right after food, right after you eat, right after there's this dopamine spike and you're ready to be entertained and you're ready to have fun still and you're still excited. And so that in itself is a trap. And everywhere you go, you have to see it and walk through it. And one of the biggest issues with it is the fact that you can't leave, right? So this
Mhm.
can lead into a case study if you'd like to mention
Yeah,
that. So,
absolutely. Share it with
sure.
me.
Sure. So I had a client who, she was a gambling addict for roughly 40 years. She was in her 60s. She started when she was 20 something. And she was actually a multimillionaire. So she didn't have an issue with the money necessarily of losing all the money, but even within the first few minutes of talking to her, even she said that, well, even I can't keep it up because I'll go broke, even being a multimillionaire, if I just keep losing hundreds of thousands of dollars all the time, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, she booked this cruise. It was like a 7-day cruise, and she was like 4 days into it. And on her fourth day, she brought about $70,000 into that casino with her. Well, she lost all of it. And
Mm.
then she decided to put in about five, maybe 10,000 more, somewhere around there. And she ended up getting a jackpot and she made $100,000. But then she just decided to keep chasing her losses and trying to get that $70,000 back, even though she had just won the $100,000, and she ended up losing the full $100,000 in the same night. So she lost roughly 170, 175, $180,000 in one night. And this was after having, several years of, her own psychologist and her own counselor. She had been roughly working on this problem for about 3 years with other modalities. And because she had 3 more days on the cruise, she ended up losing even more than that.
Mm.
So because she couldn't go anywhere. And so the trap is essentially that even if you were to have the willpower to leave, if you're still on the cruise and you're still a gambling addict, there's still a chance that you're going to be tempted to go back in and lose even more. And it's just a whole thing. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's an interesting case study. Um, what is the moment, if she shared that with you, that was her breaking point that kind of got her to threshold that she said, I want to try something else? Because as you know, as a hypnotherapist, we are often our client's last stop, and that's an honor, right? That means
Sure.
that they're getting results and we can be their last stop.
Sure.
So two-part question. What gets someone to threshold, whether it's that specific client or not?
Mhm.
And then what makes your method of working with your clients get them the results so rapidly versus other more traditional therapies and support groups?
Sure. So threshold, you can think of it. I like still the traditional understanding of threshold, which is basically a client knows that they have a problem. They
Mhm.
know that it's them that has the problem. It's not the world that needs to change. It's them that needs to change, and it needs to be right now. So when a person knows they have a problem, they admit that they have that problem. They know they can't change the world and change other people, and they're willing to be the one that changes, and they need to do it now, not Monday or Tuesday or next month. When those three things are together, you have a sense of threshold. You have a sense of a decision, a right now decision that it has to be done. Another way to think about it is your hair being on fire. If your
Mhm.
hair is on fire, if your hair was on fire with me, Adrianne, right now, would you be asking me, hey, let's would you be like saying, let's wait until the end of the podcast to go put this out? Or would you be like, hey, I got to go put this out?
That's
Right.
right.
And
That's
so
right.
it's that feeling and that decision of this has to happen now. It can't be tomorrow. It can't be next Monday. And it's me that has to make it happen, not the world. Right. So
Mhm.
that's sort of threshold. And for her specifically, I believe she was already there. because
Mhm.
she was already with a psychologist for 2 years. She was with a counselor for another year. She was roughly working on this for about 3 years. She was already at this point. The problem is that with traditional methods of gambling addiction, the standard time frame is anywhere between 3 months and 2 years to help a client actually get out of a gambling addiction. And essentially, my method is perhaps a little bit more fast, a little bit more rapid, because we're finding the real issue of what the gambling addiction is actually trying to solve, right?
Mhm.
If you remember a little earlier, I was talking about how the gambling addiction or any addiction is just the attempted solution to whatever the real problem is. And so, what I believe happens in the traditional methods is they focus more on the symptoms and they focus more on the gambling itself. But as a hypnotherapist, we don't focus on that. We focus on what actually is creating the decisions and what is the actual problem. So for her, it was a childhood trauma that happened. So we had to trace it all the way back to childhood. And when we resolved the childhood trauma, she realized what she was actually chasing, which, a lot of gamblers chase their losses. So she was realizing what she actually chased. And we healed that. We processed the emotions. We regulated the nervous system around that problem specifically. And that's what let the gambling addiction release. And so after only just one session, she no longer gambled.
That's incredible to be able to get to the root cause,
Yeah.
to offer the client, to take the client to the place where they can have a rapid healing, a permanent healing.
Yeah.
Um, as I always say, when the problem is in the mind, so is the solution. And
Absolutely.
it seems like you have a process for getting there very quickly, which
Absolutely.
is
Yeah.
which is tremendous. Let's talk about the pitfalls of sports gambling and the kind of deception, or perhaps for some people, the self-deception that goes along with sports gambling, like why maybe it seems so much more innocent than walking into a casino.
Yeah, no, yeah. Sports betting is one of the bigger ones, and it actually is more addictive than just regular casino betting, in my opinion, because what happens with sports betting is you have stats, you have, the team stats, kind of injuries. If you're really in it, right, they're going to be researching all these things. They know how they did last year and the year before. They know the team that they're on now. They know all the other players. They know the teams against them. And so they have these stats. And the problem with it is it's just like if I were to have a fear of flying, right? And I know all the stats that the plane is the safest mode of transportation. Maybe I've read that, the planes are going to be rated for turbulence 1,000 times higher than what you'd ever experience in the plane. Maybe I know that, if I have 4 engines on the plane and 3 of them are on fire, I can still land safely on one engine, right? But yet I'm still afraid, even though I know statistically and logically and with the stats that the plane is the safest mode of transportation. I still am either too nervous to even get on a plane, or I freak out every time I'm on a plane. I have panic attacks and things like that. So the stats and that logical information, it's not actually the most powerful form of information. It just seems like it is.
Mm.
And so what happens is when someone is sports betting, they have all these stats and they have this false sense of security that they know what's going to happen. They can predict it better, they can understand it more. And to a degree, perhaps that's true. But the problem is that you're not actually in the game and you have no real ability to affect the game in any way. And so because of that, you don't have any way to actually know that what your stats are saying are true. And so,
Mhm.
like, if you ever played sports, and if you've ever been in that situation where maybe you're down 10 points on the basketball game or something like that, and at halftime you get pumped up, that pep talk comes, and you get pumped up and now you're fired up and you have that energy and that rush again and that excitement to go play, that affects the game and you're the one affecting it, versus a person on the sidelines who has all this logical information, all these stats, and they think that they can affect the game because they know it, but they just can't because they're not in
Mhm.
it. And so, for that reason, it becomes a little bit more addictive because there's this logical component that I have information, that I have my intuition that can predict the outcome. And the truth is, you really can't. So,
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for unpacking that. I think that a lot of times the sports betting is how young people get
Sure.
started.
Yep.
And I'm from an area near Atlantic City where gambling is common. It's part of our culture, and it seems that some people can enjoy gambling and have fun occasionally, and others can't seem to enter the casino without hitting that ATM multiple times.
Sure.
So it's interesting to get your perspectives on some of those common traps, some of those signs and symptoms. When you connect your experience with your gambling clients to your experience with clients that maybe experience anxiety or other habit changes that they're seeking, is there a common denominator or something that you see that kind of connects all of these root
Yeah.
causes?
Yeah. So I would say, in my honest opinion, the common denominator is emotion.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is we're not really taught that emotion is okay to feel in a lot of cases, especially not the bad ones. Right. And the truth is that emotion is normal, natural, and okay to feel, including the bad ones. So, what happens is we feel all these negative emotions, whether it's boredom or anxiety or fear or sadness or loneliness or anger or any of these things. And what happens is we don't like the feeling. Logically, it doesn't feel good within our body, within ourself. And so we resist it. We resist, we judge, we push, we distract, we suppress those emotions. And that is what actually keeps them stuck. And that's what ultimately would drive someone to a coping mechanism. If I can't handle this loneliness, and I know that whenever I drink or whenever I smoke or whenever I gamble, I get relief from that loneliness, eventually my brain is going to make the connection, the association that anytime I feel this way, this is the way out. And so we move away from that pain and towards pleasure. And that's essentially how it gets stuck in that addiction process. So
Mm.
the more you do that and the more repetition there is of it, the more the brain understands that this is a quick relief and that's what it's going to be. So whether it's a cigarette or a drink or gambling or any other substance, that's essentially what happens is we're not allowing ourselves to feel the feeling. And it's scary, and I get that, and that's kind of why it's good to have someone bring you through it, somebody who's understands the somatic processes and how to regulate the nervous system and how to process emotions and do it professionally and properly. And when you can have someone guide you through that process, it's not as scary, it's not as hard. Doing it on your own, it can be, because you don't know exactly what you're doing yet, right? So it makes
Mhm.
sense. But that's the idea. So the common denominator is emotion. It's negative emotion. And essentially, we're all just essentially trying to move away from pain and towards pleasure, whether it's a coping mechanism like a attempted solution like a addiction or something like that, or if it's just video games or something like that. It could be healthy coping mechanisms, but there's still
Sure.
coping mechanisms to that problem. So
Right. Can you speak a little bit about testing in hypnosis? We like to make sure that our clients have truly resolved their problem. And I know there's a few different ways to go about testing. As far as gambling goes, can you speak to anything that you've seen with your clients where they kind of tested themselves to
yeah,
see if they were really
absolutely.
resolved?
Absolutely. So with the client I mentioned before, so we had a 12-week program. I was with her for 12 weeks. She was able to quit after the first session. She didn't have any urges or desires to go gamble, but at around the fourth week, she wanted to test herself just to see how powerful it was if she was in the environment. So she did a lot of online sports betting and regular casino betting. But so she first started with the online betting, and about 4 weeks in, she'd put in about $20, and after she lost the $20, she got out. And that was one of her first bigger understandings that this was working, because she hasn't been able to do that in years. She'd lose $20 and then she'd put another 20 and another 20 and another 20 because she's chasing that loss, right? And so she put in $20 and she had this feeling of just being like, I'm done with this. I'm over this, and she just left, right? So um, she tested herself in a real life scenario, and was able to back out. And then about a week after that, she went to a live casino. She actually went into the casino. She brought $100. She lost the $100. And instead of chasing that loss, she left. Right. So testing can be real, where you're doing it in reality, which is probably the stronger test. Right. And then we have sort of hypnotic testing. We can do, situational or emotional or hypothetical testing within questions. And that's something I definitely did with her while we were going through the session. And that kind of looks like, they'll be telling you about their symptoms and kind of what they do and their patterns in the session while you're talking about it. And what you do essentially is you reintroduce them after you've done the processing and the nervous system regulation, and they feel way better about the problem itself. And now you just start to reintroduce their triggers, reintroduce their patterns that they told you about, and just see how it's not just what they say, it's how they say it. It's how they say it. It's, are they moving past it in a better way? Do they have a solution for it instead of just getting stuck? And so there's ways that we can actually test the client before even the real thing. So we did all of that first. 4 weeks in, she did a online betting. She tested herself with that, was able to get out of it. The 5th week, she went to a real casino, tested herself with that, got out, didn't chase her losses after that. And then for the remaining 6 sessions, we just, worked on other things too. So session 1, we just worked on gambling. And then from 2 through 12, we worked on other stuff. So.
Wow. That's incredible. So she was able to probably up level her life in a lot of areas.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
perhaps for that client, the gambling was the kingpin, right? Like that one
It
thing
was one of
that
the
once
bigger ones
that
for sure.
toppled, that it made the way for more positive change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, unpack what it would look like for someone to work with you, as far as I know that you're excellent at putting your clients into a traditional trance. You've worked with me that way in the past. Also, one of your strengths is conversational hypnosis.
Mhm.
So, do you incorporate both when you work with gambling addiction clients?
Yeah. So pretty much it doesn't matter what the presenting issue is. I do a hybrid approach. I use conversational hypnosis and different modalities like coaching and NLP to get into the root of the problem. So there's 3 phases, I guess, to my process would be um, questions, getting to the root issues of what's actually going on. Whatever we think the problem is, it's not that. If it was just whatever we thought it was, we would just solve our own problems and we would have no problem. But it's never what we think it is. It's always deeper. It's always attached to something we've forgotten about and we don't even know it's even attached to that. And so we have to figure out what's actually going on. So the first part is figuring out what's actually going on. The second sort of phase of my process specifically is emotional processing and nervous system regulation. So once I find that thing, I want to process those negative emotions because it's the negative emotions that's gluing everything together and tying all of these knots together. So once you process those emotions and the nervous system doesn't have to run or avoid or freeze or shut down when thinking about that root cause, when going through that root cause, then the entire system feels more relaxed. And then the third phase is kind of bringing in the traditional approach, going into imagery, visualization, timeline processes, whatever might be good for this client, and we'll do a traditional style approach on top of it. So I do like the hybrid approach personally. I just think it gives me all of the information I need. So the first part, the second part, give me all the information I need to customize a journey, an imagery, a visualization that will also combine into that. And so I think it's a well-rounded approach, in my honest opinion, is how I do it.
Mhm. Okay, and it's easy for you to work with clients from all over because you have a virtual practice like myself, correct? So they can zoom in the privacy of their own home, their comfort of their own recliner, wherever they want to be. And
Yeah, so
when
long
they're
as we
at
speak,
threshold, when their hair
right,
is on fire and they want to
right.
put it out right now, that's when they would book the appointment with you. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Not only that though, just it could be even before that. There might be times where they're not necessarily subconsciously ready yet, and we help them guide to that ready point. Right.
Okay.
So there are times when, because you, a lot of people, they might think that they're ready, but subconsciously they're not. And so
Hmm.
they don't even know if they're ready or not. We can tell a little bit more clearly if they are or not. And so it doesn't matter if they're right there ready for it or if they're not. It's more understanding where they're at. And if they're not at that threshold, if they're not at that point of really ready to change, then it's just about motivating them and guiding them to that desire to change. And then we can make the change. So either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay, very good. Let's talk about your book, Gambling on Freedom.
Sure.
What would be the ideal time to get this book? Is this after somebody started working with you, in replacement for therapy, as a first
Sure.
step? Where do you see someone purchasing your book?
Sure. And so this is what it looks like, by the way. This is The Easy Way to Quit Gambling. It's on Amazon. And it's kind of both, really. You can get it before starting to work with me if you're not really sure how bad of a problem it is, or if you're not really sure if you even want to do sessions with a therapist yet or anything like that. It's a great sort of supplement in general, because there are people who have read the book and have quit just from reading the book. And so the way the book is designed, it's designed around one main purpose, which is what I talk about a lot in my channel, which is that so long as gambling serves a person, they're never going to quit.
Mhm.
And so the book dismantles all the illusions around gambling, kind of those traps we were talking about, the hope trap, or the relief trap, the entertainment trap, all these different uh, beliefs and things that we think gambling will give us and serve us in some way. And it dismantles all of that. So it's designed to show you how gambling really doesn't serve you at all. It only serves the casino. They're the ones winning, and we all know that logically, but yet we still do it, right? And so it really, it shows you how it's doing that, how it's not actually serving you. And then at the end of every chapter, it's designed to give you a reflective question, a introspective question, so that you can kind of be your own therapist in a way, kind of have me in the room with you, so that you're asking
Mhm.
yourself deeper questions about that chapter, specifically about that trap, about yourself, about how you feel when you're gambling, all these different things that you probably don't even think about. And by answering those questions honestly, if you're open to answering those questions, and if you're actually wanting to quit, and you're open to quitting, then the book will serve as a good supplement to help you do that. So by the end of the book, a lot of people have quit just by reading the book.
Mhm.
Um, on top of that, it's really just a supplement. So it's a good way to get into session, so you kind of know some of the questions I might even be asking you, or how it works. Because, like I said, the very first part of it is we need to figure out what's going on.
Mhm.
Whatever we think it is, it's not that, because if it was, we would just solve it. So it's a good way to understand how a therapist might work with you, which is, in my opinion, a good therapist is going to ask you some really good, deep questions to reflect on, to understand what's actually going on. So,
Mhm. Very good. Okay, well, I look forward to having more podcast interviews with you, because I particularly love your take on people experiencing anxiety and a lot of other issues. So I look forward to having you back. In the meantime, before we kind of share with everyone where they can find you, where they can get your book, how they can follow your YouTube channel, is there something that you'd like to leave with the audience before we close up?
sure. I'll leave you with a principle, a behavioral psychology principle is one of my favorites. And the principle is this: that we only ever do what we want to do. That
Mhm.
whether we're doing something or not doing something, it's because we're choosing to. At the subconscious level, there's enough justification. It could be a belief, an identity, an emotion, a learned experience from the past, a moral, a value, a principle. It could be anything at the subconscious level that is justified enough to make the decision to do what we're doing. And so, whether it's doing something or not doing something, we're doing it because we want to at the subconscious level. Everything that we do, every behavior we have, comes from positive intention for us, not for the world, but for us. And so, you can apply that to literally any situation. And when you understand that principle properly, that can help in a lot of ways. Like, let's say you're going to work and you don't like work, you're feeling off about work, you don't want to be there, you're miserable, and you're just going through the motions in that day. If you understand that you're only doing it because you really want to, there's a justification for going instead of not going. It could be that you want the money to have a roof over your head, or you want to have a nice dinner, or you want to have AC in your home and electricity. And these reasons and justifications are more important than how you feel about going. And so, because of that reason, you go. If none of this mattered, you wouldn't even go. And
Mhm.
so, no matter what you're doing, even if you're feeling off about it or bad about it, you're actually doing it because you want to. That's
Mhm.
kind of part of the book, right? It's serving you in some way. And so long as it's serving you, you'll never change it. So if you want to change something about your life, if you want to understand kind of what you're doing, understand the justifications behind it, what the real reason for doing it is, and you can change that just by tweaking it yourself if you can understand that. So
Mhm.
lean into those justifications, especially if you're doing something important like going to work. And even though you're miserable at that job, you know you like it for a reason, which is why you're there. So
Mhm.
that's something I would leave.
Well, something that was a takeaway for me from your book was I recognize that there is a lot of self-deception
Oh,
with
yeah.
gambling, but also there's a lot of deception from the marketers and from the casinos. Like, I absolutely am guilty of stopping by the casino to pick up my free gift.
Right.
So try leaving, right, without putting some money in the slot machine
Right.
or my personal favorite, the video poker machine. So for sure, unpacking the deception, the game that's being played on the gambler helps to helps you to feel more empowered. You know,
Yeah.
it's not that you didn't know these things before, but to see them in a different light is
For sure.
really empowering. So I thank you so much for your book. I thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the world, for everything that gets better when someone gets relief from a gambling addiction, that they can feel proud of themselves again, that their marriages can be healed, that their families can be protected. There are so many layers to addictions of all sorts.
For
They
sure.
don't just hurt the person who's addicted, they hurt everyone who loves that person. And so I thank you for the wonderful and powerful work that you're doing in the world today. Thank you for being my hypnotherapist. Thank you for setting me free from family drama and trauma and all of the phobias and different things. I appreciate you, and I
Definitely.
do. I am so familiar with your process and how you can turn a conversation into a hypnosis session and make a permanent change. I experienced that this year when I put up my Christmas decorations on November 1st because my old story, which you helped me recognize was not my own, was that I didn't want to do it and I was being forced to do it. No one was going to help me, and you helped me shift that into I get to do it,
Sure.
and that there is joy in that. So that was a breakthrough that brought me joy the last two holiday seasons, and that was kind of something that had always been the same that I didn't think would change. And there's a multitude of examples just in my personal work with you. And I really encourage anyone who's listening to book a session with Dustin. Dustin, share with my audience the very best ways to follow your content or to work with you one to one.
Sure. So if you resonated with the gambling addiction content, I do have a channel specifically dedicated to that, which is my handle is at gambling on freedom for YouTube. I'm on TikTok and Facebook as well, but I spend most of my time on YouTube with that. Um, to book one-on-one, I do have a couple different websites. The first one would be www.gamblingonfreedom.com, which would be my gambling one, or www Dustin Fisher, Texas, DustinFisherTX.com,
Okay.
which is just kind of more my generic um, website, I guess, that has more just any problem that you'd have a issue with, anxiety, fears, phobias, anything like that. You can come in that way. So, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I will link up those things. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll link them up and pin a comment with those links in the comments. And if you're watching on Spotify or Apple or anywhere else, go ahead and check the episode summary and you'll find those links there. And until next time, Dustin, thank you for being on the Get Well With Me podcast.